I am beyond excited to bring today's discussion to the table and discuss human-centric social media strategies. And before we dive in, if you are new here, I just want to say this is a candid conversation. There's no heavy editing or like super professional work put into this. I am a firm believer in authenticity through marketing and social media design, and you will probably see my dogs pop up. As you can see, I'm in my living room with my plants that I have not killed yet. And I know what you're probably thinking. The majority of my clients ask me it when I dive right into discussing human-centric design within the marketing world. Isn't all social media strategy human-centric? And the answer is so much more complex than a simple yes or no, because human beings are extremely complex. And while we want to think that we have the hopes and the needs and the goals of our clients in mind, what typically tends to happen with entrepreneurs when we are starting out is that we set our own goals and our own expectations and our own deadlines. And we expect these to be reached. And therefore, our strategy becomes largely centered not around the client or the audience, but around what we believe needs to happen in order to fulfill those goals. Now, it's important to understand goals are going to happen. They can exist within your marketing strategy, but with human-centric design, they are not more important than the audience that we are serving. And what that means is they are still important to us, but the content that we are generating needs to focus more on the wants and the needs of the clients and less on ourselves. Because here's what happens when we center our marketing strategies around our goals. We create strategies with extreme gaps in them, and it's large potential that your competition is doing the same exact thing. Human-centric design is somewhat of a new concept within marketing in terms of being thought about. It does exist, people do utilize it, but what tends to happen is that it gets overlooked in the process of the content creation. And what that means is that we work off of generalized assumptions about our ideal clients. We know their age, we know their demographic, we know their location, their gender. We know what we think they need in order to achieve the goals that we want to help them achieve. And hopefully, we hope it's our product or our service. But in reality, we haven't stopped to ask that ideal client, what do you need? What do you struggle with on a daily basis? And when we discuss human-centric marketing, one of the key concepts that I tend to point to is ideal times to post. We are obsessed with growing our social media because vanity metrics feel so freaking good when we can achieve them. Vanity metrics are anything that makes you feel really good, but ultimately doesn't matter to the overall success of your strategy. This can include a high follower rate, people liking your post, commenting, bookmarking it, whatever. These all are vanity metrics because 100,000 followers doesn't always equal 100K in the bank. And as much as we love being able to say that people like and respect us, growing our audience in a very authentic and normalized way actually can create stronger bonds and sell more. So the person who might have a third of your following could still be outselling you. It doesn't matter how high the number of followers is on your Instagram account. What matters is that the content you're creating is informed by the overall perception of your audience. And what that means is, and back to that reference of ideal posting times, we need to stop focusing on posting at specific times of day, like 11 a.m. or 4 p.m., and understand when individuals are actually checking their social media so that we can show up at the times that are most convenient for them, not us. Because here's what happens. As we make these posts, we might grow our audience, But are the people showing up at 11 a.m. the real audience that we want to grow? A lot of times what we find is success rates can be extremely high at 8 p.m. because everybody's just put the kids in bed. They're kicking back on the couch and they're watching the news. And human-centric design recognizes they have a life. They aren't just showing up at 12 p.m. in the afternoon when they're in the middle of a surprise meeting or when they're trying to speed eat so that they can get their work done. The second thing about human-centric design is that when we understand the times people are showing up and we provide content based on the problems that these individuals are struggling with, we can actually recognize how we can help them. When we overgeneralize a population and we assume we know what they want and they need and what they're struggling with, what tends to happen is that we get the same tips and tricks shared over and over and over again. And as you are trying to stand out, you're actually blending in because what you're sharing isn't really breaking news. And when you listen to individuals and you hear them and they tell you exactly what they need, you are able to create content that your competition isn't focusing on because they don't understand the gaps that exist right now. They haven't done this research. And I will tell you, I have worked for big names. I have worked with individuals who have large followings, and it's common practice that this gets overlooked. So if you want to set your social media strategy up and really, really define a human-centric strategy, I can't tell you how beneficial it's going to be for you in the long run. I do also want to emphasize that when you design human-centric strategies, centering around your audience actually makes them feel more seen, more heard, and more valued because you took the time and you invested in understanding who they are. These generalized assumptions about people can typically lead to overly racist undertones or overgeneralized statements that actually offend a community instead of empower them. And it's a very thin line to walk as we continue to grow and as cancel culture is taking on more and more individuals within the world. Because the last thing we want to do is assume that our millennial audience or Gen Z needs all of these slang and hype words that don't actually fit within our messaging. A really, really good example is the word slay. It is associated with a community and a culture. Another one is queen. That is a very, very heavy word within the drag community. And when we say, yes, queen, we are actually stealing that language away from them. And you don't actually think that you're doing it. We don't sit here and say, oh, I can't use this because it's a part of this culture. But what happens is when we leverage that language for our own benefit, people do recognize it. And understanding the individuals that we're reaching can actually allow us to leverage the right language because we understand their attention span, their reading comprehension level, and even what content they digest. If all you're doing is putting out post after post, image after image with long form captions, you're potentially missing out if your audience only looks at Reels or TikToks. So understanding that we truly don't understand our audience is at the core of all human-centric marketing. And when we become comfortable with the idea that we have been doing things wrong, we can actually allow ourselves to open up and understand what we can do right. So I'm going to challenge you today. Look at your social media strategy and ask yourself, which came first, my audience or my goals? And I don't mean, did I say, okay, my audience is 23 to 44, they are female only, and they love to read, and their problem is they don't know how to grow on social media. I mean, did you sit down and ask your audience who they are and what they need and what they struggle with on a consistent basis? Because if you didn't do that, your goals are your primary focus right now. And I know that human-centric strategy can be very scary because you are releasing this idea that your strategy has to be driven by deadlines and goals that you want to achieve. But those goals and those deadlines still exist in the background. They're still there. They don't go away. What is happening is you are now able to provide individuals with more value and more emphasis on what they need that makes them feel inherently drawn to the services or products that you are providing. And at the end of the day, if they want to buy, they're going to buy. And they're 10 times more likely to buy when they feel intrinsically tied to it versus you sitting here and saying, here is why you need it and here is why. Go to the link in my bio and purchase it. I am beyond excited to start this little Candid conversation series. If you have any questions about social media marketing, I encourage you to leave them in the comments so that I can develop content in the future that you need. See what I did there? I do encourage you to check out the social media class. It is an extremely welcoming environment. It includes 2 live classes per month, 2 Q&A sessions, and the potential to get bonus content consistently throughout the month. We do everything from Reels challenges to TikTok challenges to Facebook and more. And every month we dive into strategies and techniques that can allow us to connect more with individuals from around the world. For example, August of 2021, we dove deep into design thinking and creating processes and audience members and personas that really drive our business income. I hope to see you on the inside, and until the next time, thank you so much for joining me.